Can you guys hear me?
Yes.
All right, so my name is Joe Durant. I'm one of the senior instructors with the Center for Pain and Stress Research, and tonight we're going to be doing a tutorial on the Dolphin Neurostim. So if you have one, you might want to pull it out and get it ready. It's going to be useful to have it on you. Internet is a little spotty down here right now. I apologize. We had a hurricane/tropical storm come through that really just kind of finished up last night, and internet service has been a little spotty today, but if for some reason I do black out on you guys, I will join back with my phone and we will go from there. Okay. So if you have a Dolphin Neurostim, grab it and we're going to get going. We have a lot to do tonight. So we're going to start with an hour of instruction, and I'm going to leave 30 minutes at the end for questions and answers. You guys can either type the questions in the chat section or you can just ask them in person. Either one of this is fine. So I'm going to slip my glasses on here so I can see what I'm doing. So looking at the Dolphin Neurostim, starting at the tip, we have an alloy tip here that is biocompatible. You'll notice that if you push on it, it kind of retracts back into the tip a little bit. There is a spring down in there. So when you clean these, we do recommend that you clean them with an alcohol wipe. Don't pour any liquid down in here because that can actually interfere with your ability to make a good connection in there, and it will affect your ability to give a good treatment. Moving back up from here, you'll notice there's a black button that if you push on it right now, does absolutely nothing. But when the unit is on, this is what you'll use to initiate treatments. And as long as you're holding this button down, you will be doing a treatment. So moving from there up, there's a roller switch right here. This roller switch does two things. The first thing it does is to turn the unit on. And the second thing this unit does is to, it's actually going to adjust the sensitivity of not the sensitivity, it's going to adjust the intensity of the stimulation itself. So if you find that your stimulation is a little bit too strong, then you're going to want to adjust this. So when we turn this on, if we look on the back of the unit, there should be a green light right here, and you'll notice there is not on this one. So let me grab one that does do what it needs to. So if you look on the back of here, you'll see a green light right here. And that tells me that the battery is good on this one. So as long as you see a green light when you turn it on, the battery is good. And this is the first thing you should always do when you check these units out, okay? If, however, you turn the unit on and you do not see a green light, that means you need to change the battery. So I'm going to go over with you guys how to change the battery real quick on these. So if you look on the back side of these units, you will see there is a screw at either end here. Please, whatever you do, do not take these screws out. You have no idea how many people tried to change the batteries on these units by pulling the screws out. There's a perfectly good battery compartment right here. And it seems a little silly, but we have several hundred times a year have to have these sent back to us to have them put back together because people have taken the screws out in an attempt to change a battery. And that does two things. One, it voids your warranty. And two, it means you got to send it back to us and we have to put it together because parts fall out. So I'm going to go over how to change this with you guys. You need a screwdriver or a pocket knife or even a coin will work. But you'll notice there's a little slot right here. If you just simply pop this open, you'll notice there is a 9-volt battery nestled in there. And you're going to give it a little pop to loosen it up, and you can pull it right out. You will notice that this is a Duracell battery. It is one of 3 batteries we recommend for these units. So they're going to come stock with a Panasonic battery that looks like, let's see here. That looks like this. So you can either use a Panasonic battery, a Duracell battery, or an Energizer battery. Any of those are fine. Please do not use any other batteries but these 3. And there are 2 very specific reasons for that. One is that, oddly enough, not all 9-volt batteries are the same size. So AA batteries, AAA batteries, C batteries, and D batteries are all the same size. 9-volt batteries, some are a little longer, some are a little bit shorter. And you'll notice there is no cord down in here, so you don't have that little squishy pad that normally connects to a 9-volt battery. Those things always break, so we did away with that. So this is a sized battery compartment. And if you put a battery in here that's too short, it's going to rattle back and forth and you're going to get intermittent electrical contacts, and it's going to affect your ability to render a good treatment. If you try and put a battery in here that's too long, there is a plastic post in here that you can actually break if you push it too hard. and you can actually damage the circuit board inside the device. So please just stick with these 3 batteries. The other reason is even if you find a battery that fits, especially cheap dollar store batteries, they have a really bad habit of dumping all their voltage at once, and you can actually damage the circuit board of this by overrunning it with too much electricity. So please do stick for right now with these kind of batteries. We are researching some rechargeable batteries, but that is a work in progress. We need to make sure that they're not going to damage the equipment before we recommend them. So once you've got your device open, you'll simply look at the little diagram in here, line it up with the prongs on the battery, and place it in. It's a tight fit, and especially when you go to put the battery compartment cover on, it's an even tighter fit. It's going to feel like you're going to break the unit. You're going to hear a sharp snap. I promise you it's not broken. It's just meant to be that tight so it doesn't rattle around. And when you turn it on, you get a nice green light here, which tells me the battery is good. So as a therapist using these things for the last, I don't know, 20 or 25 years, it's been quite a while, I can tell you that I use these with just about every treatment I do. So let's say 20 minutes out of every hour. I do 3 10-hour days and 2 8-hour days a week. So I change my batteries probably about once a month, maybe once every 3/4 of a month or so. They last a long time. If you're doing a lot of vagus nerve stimulation, you're not going to get as much time out of it because that is a time-consuming thing. But anyway, you get a lot of treatments out of a 9-volt battery. So just stick with those basic kinds. It's not that more expensive to buy the good batteries, and your equipment's going to last longer. Okay. So we turn the unit on. We can adjust the intensity of the stimulation with this switch. We can push this black button now, and you'll notice that this light is blinking, and you can hear the device beeping. So as soon as I take my finger off this black button, the treatment is over. But as long as I'm holding this button, the treatment is ongoing. So when you first turn this device on, it's in what we call the search mode. Okay. And then once you push this button, you're in treatment mode, but it's only in treatment mode for as long as you hold this button down. All right, so I'm going to turn it back off. You'll notice there's a small button up from the roller switch. And again, if the unit is off, it does nothing. If you turn the unit on, you'll hear a constant tone. Got a nice green light, got a good battery. And then we're going to push this button.
Get down.
And you'll notice that the device. Hey guys, somebody has their microphone on. Could you guys make sure your microphones are muted? Thank you. So if you look on the back of the device, you're going to see that the light is blinking here. And that blinking light tells us this is in a timed treatment mode. So if you're doing something like vagus nerve stimulation on yourself, this will run for anywhere from 11 to about 14 minutes. It measures the number of electrons going through the tip and cuts off at a certain amount. And as soon as it does that, it will revert back to what we call search mode. So you can hear the tone again, and you can go back again and push that button again, and it'll run again for a time treatment mode. So in this mode, you do not have to push this black button. It just treats constantly. But it does have a timer on there, because what we've run into in the past is that people will use these and they'll do some vagus nerve stimulation, and when they're going to sleep at night, and they'll end up falling asleep with this on, and they'll get 6 hours of vagus nerve stimulation or 8 hours of vagus nerve stimulation. And that much vagus nerve stimulation will make you pretty draggy the next day. So we put a timer on here. It's also useful if you happen to work in a clinical setting, so you know about how long your patient's been on treatment. Okay. So that's everything on the front of the unit. If we flip over to the back of the unit, there you notice there's a big shiny metal plate here. This is very important in doing your treatments. So electricity has to go in and out of this unit. To do that, the tip of this has to touch your skin. The other part of it has to be in contact with your thumb or an electrodes. At this point, we're going to talk about your thumb. So if you put your thumb on this plate right here and hold the device like a pen so that your middle finger is kind of hovering over this black button, when you're ready, you can actually do a treatment. So electricity is going to go in through the tip of this, through the patient. You're going to have some skin-to-skin contact with your patient somewhere. So if I were treating myself, I would put this on my skin, and that's enough. But if I were treating someone else, I would need to touch this on their skin and be touching the metal plate, and also have my hand on their skin somewhere. It can't be on their clothing. It's got to be on their skin. So you could touch their neck, you could touch their hand, anywhere you have skin-to-skin contact, because the electrons are going to go into the tip of this, back through their skin, and come out in your hand and go back into the unit. So that's completing the circuit. If you do not touch your patient, all you are doing with this is acupressure, you might as well use a wooden stick. If you do not have your thumb on this metal plate, all you are doing is acupressure, and you might as well use a wooden stick. So make sure that you are pushing on, not pushing on, but have your thumb on this metal plate, and you have skin-to-skin contact with your patient. Doesn't matter where. They could grab your arm. You could stick your finger behind their ear. The more skin contact you have, the better. It does not work to have contact on clothing. That is a no-go for this. So moving up the unit from there, you'll notice there are two slider switches here. One is marked skin type, and the other is marked polarity. So we're going to go over the skin type first. This device has a point finder in it, so it will find acupuncture points, myofascial trigger points, and motor points. It does that very accurately. It's one of the more accurate point finders on the market. But it relies on measuring how conductive your skin is to electricity. So all those points, myofascial trigger points, motor points and muscles, and Chinese acupuncture points are all highly conductive to electricity, which means if you use an electrician's ohm meter and run it around your skin, you can actually find these points. So you could actually go to the hardware store and buy one of these and run it around your skin and watch the dial. This doesn't have a dial on it, it has a tone. So I'll demonstrate that in just a minute. But you need to be mindful of what your patient's skin feels like, because if they have very sweaty skin, that's going to be very conductive to electricity because that's salt water. If they have very dry skin, their skin is not going to be very conductive. And if they have just kind of normal skin, like, you're good. So I live down in the States in Georgia. It's pretty humid here most of the year. I normally have this on the dry, not on the dry, on the normal setting. That seems to be good for where we are. And then if you move up from there, you'll see a polarity switch. So in the world of acupuncture, there is tonifying and sedating. And tonifying is to bring things up. So that would be if you had somebody with something like Bell's palsy where their face was drooping, you want to bring that up, you would use a positive polarity. Or if you have something that is a condition of excess, that would be something like probably most of the things you guys are going to end up treating. That would be like headaches and constipation, back pain, disc problems, MS, COVID. Almost all of those things are conditions you would treat with a negative polarity. So if you look in the book that comes with the device, there are a couple of different books. One looks like this, and it says Vagus Nerve Recovery Manual. And the other looks like this. It says Natural Health. So if you have the vagus nerve kit, you'll have this. This comes stock with the device. And so we're going to find a protocol in here. It doesn't really matter which one I find, but we're going to look up one for menstrual cramps. So you'll see there's one for menstrual cramps right here. And you will notice that next to each of these points that are marked on here, there's a plus or a minus sign. So you simply look at the diagram and you look at the polarity switch on this device and you choose minus or plus. And you'll notice there's a third setting on here that has a plus minus on it. And that's a biphasic setting. So we're going to end up using that when we get into treating scars in just a few minutes here. But first we need to talk about how to actually find points with this device. So to do that, I am going to open up this Vagus Nerve Recovery Manual. I'm going to go to, let's see here, page, well, that's a good one. You don't have to open your books up. I just want to do this to make it easier for me to show you guys how to find these points. Let's see. If I look on page 12 in this Vagus Nerve Recovery Manual, you'll notice there are some points here. And we're going to look at this point right here, which is large intestine 4, which is an easy one to locate. And the other one is large intestine 11, which is at the end of the elbow crease right here. So I'm going to go over those points with you guys. And I'm going to get a marker here. I'm going to mark it on myself, and then we're going to use a point finder to see how accurate our point finder is. So Large intestine 4 is an acupuncture point that's located in the web of the thumb. The biggest mistake people make is they go for the skin part right here. It's in the fleshy part up here, okay? So if you're looking for this point, you don't want to pinch right here. You want to go up and pinch in right here, and it's a little bit tender if you pinch hard. A trick that some people use is they will actually take the line of their thumb and put it on the web and roll it up like this and pinch from there. Let's see, like that. And you're on your acupuncture point. So I'm going to mark that here where I felt the discomfort. So I've got a point marked on my hand here. And now I'm going to take the Dolphin Neurostim. I'm going to turn it on. I'm going to look. I got a green light, which means I got a great battery. I'm going to put my thumb on this metal plate. That's very important. I see people trying to hold this a lot of different ways, put their fingers on it in odd ways. Just, do yourself a favor. These were designed to be held with your thumb on that metal plate. And you want to be able to rest the heel of your hand on whoever you're working on, because that allows you to have fine motor control. This is a very sensitive device, and you need to be able to move it slowly and in small circles. And it's really difficult to do that if your hand is hovering up over somebody. You're going to have a tendency to either put too much pressure or not enough pressure. But if your hand is resting, it gives you a fulcrum that you can work from. So I'm going to do the exact opposite of what I just told you to do so you guys can watch the light here. So I'm going to turn it around. And if I were working on somebody else, I would rest my hand on them like this. And I would take the Dolphin Neurostim. I would put it on a normal setting because my skin is pretty normal. And then I would pull this around on the skin. And you can hear like a little change in the tone there. And so as I get closer to the point, you can hear a higher pitch. And then you'll see the light just went out. So when you hear a really high pitch like that and the light goes out, that means you're on the acupuncture point. So what you'll do at that point is you're going to push the black button right here, and you're going to hold it down. And we're going to say that I have something like a headache, because large intestine 4 is a great acupuncture point for headaches and facial pain. And I'm going to hold it right here, and I'm going to count beeps. I'm going to count about 30 beeps. And you'll notice if I adjust the roller switch on here, it makes different tones. So I'm going to adjust it to my comfort level. Some people are going to be very sensitive, and you're going to have to turn this way down. And some people can tolerate much more. So you need to tailor it to whoever you're working on. So you're going to count out about 30 beeps, and you're going to do the same thing on the opposite side. So we always try and treat both sides of the body when we can. If you try to treat these points twice, it doubles your chance of hitting them once. It balances things out quite a bit. So that's a great thing to do. All right. The other point we're going to go over quickly here is how to find a point called large intestine 11. So I'm going to adjust the camera a little bit here so you guys can see. And I'm going to show you my elbow here. So there's an acupuncture point that runs, if you run down the crease of the elbow right here, it's right at the end of the elbow. It's called large intestine 11. It is a homeostatic acupuncture point. It is used I used to use it when my children had fevers when they were small kids. It's a great point for bringing fevers down. But any situation where there's not homeostasis in the body, it's a great point for. So you'll notice in acupuncture, when I talk about acupuncture points, this was large intestine 4. This is small intestine 11. Each of the acupuncture points is named after an organ of the body and then a number. So each of the organ systems, you'll have these meridians that are named after different organ systems in the body. And the ones on the front are female or yin organs. The ones on the back are male or yang organs. The most important ones in terms of acupuncture tend to be the female ones on the front of the body. Those are things like your heart, your liver, your kidneys. They're the organs that are always working and are most vital for life. The male organs are things like your stomach, your small intestines, your large intestines. You can do surgery, take out huge hunks of those. You can live just fine. So they say that the male organs are like a man. They're hollow, superficial. They tend to fill up and empty, and you can live without them. So there's your acupuncture joke for the night. But each of these meridian lines kind of runs the length of the body and has points marked on them. And this allows you to find those points. So we're going to go back to looking at large intestine 11 here. And we're going to turn the Dolphin Neurostim on. We're going to check to make sure we got a good green light there. You can see I've got my thumb on the metal plate there. And I'm going to pull it down so where you guys aren't going to see the light. But I'm going to pull this down the crease of my elbow. When I get over the point, you're going to hear a really high pitch. Now, if I turn this around, you'll see that light. You'll see the light's off. Now, watch what happens if I take my finger off of that metal plate. See that? See the light come on? That tells me I don't have a good connection. So here I've got a good connection. Here I don't. So when I'm looking for points, I should hear a little bit of change in tone. And when I get over the point, I should hear a lot of change in tone and the light should go off. Now, it's going to take a couple of days of practice for you guys to get used to locating acupuncture points with the Dolphin Neurostim, and that's fine. What I did when I was first learning this is I took one acupuncture point per day, and I found it on each of my patients. So that was like 8 to 10 patients a day, and in no time I knew my acupuncture points. If you have this for your own personal use, if you just practice the points on the little protocols you have, they're pretty easy. There are one or two pitfalls, though. The biggest pitfall is that people have a tendency to push too hard with the Dolphin Neurostim. And if you push too hard, you're going to compress the skin. And if you compress the skin, it will actually thin things out, and it actually becomes more conductive at that point. So you can actually create what we call a false positive on a point. Like I'm going to go someplace where there's not an acupuncture point, and I'm just going to push down. So you'll notice nothing's happening right now, but if I push down really hard, you can hear the tone go up. Oh. And the light goes out. Now, if I take my fingers off, obviously I got a light there, but it looks like I've actually found an acupuncture point because I hear a high pitch and the light went out. But really what's happening is I've pushed so hard. If I go back to that point and don't push hard, I don't get the same kind of change in tone. But if I push down really hard, light goes out and pitch goes up. So the biggest mistake you can make is to push too hard with this device. The second biggest mistake you can make is to move too quickly. It takes a millisecond or so for this device to actually locate the acupuncture points. So you need to move slowly and deliberately. If it makes you feel any better, my kids, when they were small, could generally find acupuncture points better than I could because this was like a game for them. It's like giving them a video game. Like they'll figure it out before you will. So if little kids can figure it out, us as adults can certainly figure it out. Okay, so that's enough on locating general points. If you don't know what to do, always refer to the protocols in the manual. If, however, there is a protocol that somebody tells you, they just give you a series of acupuncture points and you don't know which polarity to choose. So you need to kind of think about what is going on. Is it a condition of being too much or is it a condition of being not enough? In 99.9% of the cases that you guys are mostly going to treat, it's going to be a situation where there's too much. So you're going to be treating a lot of conditions of excess, too much pain, too much headache, too much earache, too much fever, too much constipation, too much diarrhea, too much nausea, too much fill in the blank. It's generally going to be too much. There are some things that might be deficient though. Like if you're doing an acupuncture facelift and trying to tone areas, if your adrenals are really shot and you were trying to bring up your adrenals a bit, you might tonify your kidney energy, which is the source point for kidney energy in acupuncture. So there's some times when you might use that positive polarity. It just doesn't show up quite as frequently. And also we're going to get into this biphasic setting right here that slides all the way over this plus minus. We're going to go over that for treating scars, and we're going to do that in just a minute. So I have found that the best way to teach you guys how to treat a scar is to actually do a treatment. Since I don't have any huge scars of any kind, I'm going to grab a piece of paper. And we are going to pretend that I have given myself open heart surgery, and I have a big, huge open heart surgery scar on my chest. So I've got a little bit of paper here and I've got some tape, and I'm going to draw this out on a piece of paper. While I'm doing that, a little word about scars. This is probably the fastest you will ever see a scar released in your life. I have been doing manual therapy for 29 years, coming up on 30 years. And I have spent thousands of dollars on all kinds of courses to learn cupping and manual therapy techniques, and I've watched injection techniques for scars, and I've taken scraping courses with gua sha. There's all kinds of ways you can treat scars. However, the thing you have to understand about scars is scars have very strange electrochemical properties. So if you want a scar to let go, and make no mistake, the only way you can ever get rid of a scar is to actually cut it out. And beyond that, you're simply changing the density of the tissue. So if you cut a scar out, chances are another scar is going to replace it. But if you can change the density of the tissue, it becomes much more pliable. So essentially the scar sort of disappears. It's still there, but the consistency changes so much that it feels like normal skin. So what we know from doing research, and this was ultrasound research, so we used diagnostic ultrasound to measure how dense the scar was, and the measure was called the cicatrix or cicatrix gray mean density. What we found out is that one treatment properly done with a Dolphin Neurostim, you need two of them to do a scar treatment. One treatment properly done will yield you about a 20% reduction in the overall density of the scar. So it's actually quite good. So you figure about 5 treatments is enough to get you a pretty good release on a scar. So in my practice, that's something I market for. I market to plastic surgeons and other surgeons because they might do a great job with what they do. But even though it's a great looking scar, it doesn't mean it's not a painful scar. And it doesn't mean it's not a scar that's binding and pulling on an area. You could have something like a hip replacement scar that's actually pulling on your shoulder. Imagine somebody pulling down on your shirt and trying to move your arm. You can do it, but it's quite difficult. But if you release the shirt, your arm moves just fine. Scars can do that. Your body is covered with a matrix. It's like a body stocking called fascia. And if you put cuts through it, surgical cuts through it, it sticks that fascia down. And it becomes quite hard to get the range of motion that you need to get. And it can be over quite a distance. I used to do 1 day a week in a women's health clinic. And I can't tell you how many C-section and hysterectomy scars I treated over the years for both low back pain and posterior neck pain. A lot of mastectomy scars, pull, just a lot of different things like that. Open heart surgery scars, like I'm going to demonstrate in just a minute. Those are huge in posterior neck pain and upper back pain, but any of the scars can cause quite a bit of both pain. So the scar itself can be painful. The scar can restrict range of motion. The scars can actually block the flow of energy. If you're into acupuncture, they do actually do that. So anytime you see a scar, even if it's not painful or even if it doesn't restrict range of motion, you should probably treat it because somehow it's affecting the flow of energy along those particular meridians if you see that it cuts through a particular meridian. And then we get into the fact that scars electrically affect your autonomic nervous system, which is your fight or flight response. Scars can actually hyperstimulate local sympathetic nerve fibers. And when that happens, it ramps up your sympathetic nervous system and can actually contribute to anxiety. And even a very old scar that doesn't hurt and seems fine can cause new pain to be even worse because it increases your fight or flight response. And if you inactivate that scar electrically by repolarizing the tissue, which is what we're going to do, we're actually going to change the electrical properties of the scar tissue. Then what happens is when you repolarize that, it stops stimulating the local sympathetic nerve fibers and doesn't wind up your brain into a ball of anxiety and discomfort. So I'm going to draw my little open heart surgery scar here. Put a couple pieces of tape on here so it's easy for you guys to see it once I get this thing up on my shirt. Treating scars is one of my favorite things I get to do in therapy because it always works so well. And I even treat scars in animals, dogs, horses, sometimes even cats. But cats have to be pretty sick before they let you treat them, just to let you know. They can really hurt you. So we're going to take this paper here and just tape it on. And you'll see here that I have a simulated scar where you would have an open heart surgery scar. And what we need to release that scar is we need 2 Dolphin Neurostims. So we need 1 Dolphin Neurostim that we're going to set on the negative setting like this. Skin type doesn't matter. I would just push it over to dry. And the other, we're going to slide this over to this biphasic setting. So on the slider here, we're going to switch it over to a plus minus. And I'm going to also put this one on the dry setting. And so now I'm going to have a Dolphin Neurostim in each hand. So the reason I need 2 of these is because scar tissue is not conductive to electricity at all. It's very non-conductive. And what we want to do is we want to repolarize that tissue and have electrons be able to flow freely through there so it changes the consistency of it. Well, that's a little difficult if it doesn't conduct electricity. As a matter of fact, if you tried to use a normal TENS unit and grab some pads like this and stuck it on top of a scar, the electricity would just take the path of least resistance. It would just go around the scar. It wouldn't go through the scar tissue itself. So we need two separate power sources. We need to push from one side, which is the negative polarity. We need to pull from the other side, which is the positive on the biphasic. And then we need to pick it up and throw it back across, which is the negative. So that's why we have this biphasic setting on 1. So we're going to push it across, pick it up, throw it back across. And it's like a game of ping pong, back and forth across the scar. We're just bouncing electrons back and forth through there. And the more we can do that, the better the release is on the scar. So the technique I'm going to teach you is a basic scar technique. I teach an entire 2-day workshop on how to release scars. It is completely worth your time to take it if you're a therapist, but this will be enough to get you started. So what we want to do is we're going to take both these units. We're going to put one on the negative, one on biphasic. We're going to turn them on. We're going to make sure we have a nice green light there. We're going to put our thumbs on the metal plate. Now, we are not going to try to find acupuncture points at this time. We're actually just going to be setting these down on either side of the scar. And you're going to count 10 beeps. 8, 9, 10. Move down 1/4 inch. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. So I'm going to do that all the way down the scar. Now, what that ends up looking like in practical terms is I have my 2 Dolphin Neurostims here. I'm going to go on either side of the scar. Now, you're going to notice I'm not going to go immediately on the scar itself. I'm going to start on either side of the scar. And then I'm going to move down 1/4 inch at a time and just work my way down through the scar a little bit at a time. And each time I work down through there, I'm going to be bouncing electrons back and forth through the scar. So I'm counting 10 beeps at each one of these. And the electricity is kind of swarming back and forth through this scar. So I've gotten to the end of the scar. Now, what I like to do is switch the units in my hands so it switches the polarity up a little bit. Is start back at the bottom, go about every 1/4 inch. Again, count 10 beeps all the way back up to the top, moving 1/4 inch at a time. When I get to the top, that's 2 passes. I'm going to do one more pass. So we have a total of 3 passes. So I'm going to switch these again in my hands. You don't have to if you don't want to. You're going to work all the way back down, again, counting 10 beeps. Now, if I had more time, I would count 30 or 40 or 50 beeps. You could take a long time to do this, but I'm trying to teach you guys a quick and dirty way to release these scars. All right. So at this point, we've bounced electrons back and forth through this scar tissue. So there's some conductivity in there now. So because there's some conductivity in there, we want to force electrons down through the scar tissue itself. So I've got a Dolphin Neurostim in either hand. I would have my thumbs on the metal plate. I would have some skin-to-skin contact with the patient. And I would go at either end of the scar like this, on top of the scar itself, and count out 10 beeps. Again, move in 1/4 inch segments. And that's 1 pass. Move in 1/4 inch segments again. That's 2 passes. Move in another pass. So that's 3 passes at 10 beeps each, and you're done. So that is the basics of how to do a scar. Now, there are some different things we need to talk about with this scar tissue business. So it's a basic scar. What would happen if you were treating, say, a large burn scar? Like down here in South Georgia where I live, there are a number of paper plants, and a lot of them use steam for various things, and I have seen horrific steam burns. Steam has an awful lot of energy in it and burns pretty deep. So what would you do if you had a scar that looked like this? Like a big round scar? Well, the same thing. You would start on either side of the scar and you would work around the scar itself like a clock. Just do 3 passes around the scar itself. And then you're going to go and you're going to just take points and work through the scar tissue itself. So not the same 3 passes. You're just going to keep working through there. And it's going to be more time consuming because it's a lot more surface area. But I can absolutely tell you that it is worth your time to treat those kinds of scars. It will actually reduce the overall visual effect of keloid scars. They will actually shrink down to some degree if you are doing a treatment on them. So the biggest thing is it will reduce the swelling in a scar. So you can take a scar that's pretty ugly and very quickly make it look a lot more like normal skin. My expectation is I mostly treat scars not so much for looks, but mostly for how uncomfortable they are or how much they affect people's function. So my expectation is the first time I treat a scar, I want to see at least a 50% reduction in the overall pain from the scar itself. Like if it's entrapping nerves, I want to see that gone by about 50%. And this is really important. Any change you make in a scar is permanent. Unless you re-injure that area and cause new scar tissue to grow, whatever change you make in that scar is a permanent thing. So if you increase the movement in a scar by X percentage, it's going to stick. If you reduce the density of a scar by 20%, that 20% is going to stick. So let's say I did a treatment today. What you'll notice is you'll do the treatment today, and over the next day or so, the scar actually continues to improve. So I would say if you had to like pick a number, I would say, 2 at most 3 treatments a week. But you could do a treatment today and you could do another treatment in 2 weeks from now and not lose any ground because the change you make in the scar is permanent. So that's an important thing to remember. If you had to do it every day, you could certainly treat every day. You're not going to lose anything by doing that. It's just that your treatments do actually make change without you do anything for a couple of days afterwards because the scar is actually changing electrically. These also work quite well over fresh wounds. People say, like, how soon after an injury can we do this? The answer is immediately. So a friend of mine just had elbow surgery, and we started using this, and she's got a huge dressing on it. So we've had to work around the area, but we're trying to bounce electrons back and forth through there because when you use low frequency direct current like this, it will increase ATP production by 400 or 500%. It will increase cellular membrane transport, and it will increase protein synthesis. So all of those are the 3 things you need for healing. Works equally well on things like sprained ankles. And I was teaching a scar course down in South Florida, down around Vero Beach. I don't know, it's been a couple months now. And there was a lady in my class who had a son who broke his tibia, I believe. And they went and had it cast or braced or whatever they do for it. He didn't have to have surgery. And they went back in about 3 weeks. And the doctor and the mother treated it every day over the break with the Dolphin Neurostim, using 2 of these, just like a scar. And when they went back and they had it x-rayed, the doctor actually thought he had the wrong set of x-rays. Like, it looked almost completely healed, and he thought there was no way that was this kid, and it would cause a bit of confusion. But the electrostimulation does really, really, really improve the healing response. So it's a way you can kind of direct the body's energy to engage in healing. I've actually had a couple of friends with non-healing diabetic ulcers, and I was able to get some tissue granulation there when wound care failed at the hospital. So nothing against them. It's just electricity works really well, and most of those programs don't use electricity. So very powerful tool. You can do head scars. You can do deep abdominal adhesions. Let's say you had somebody who had a deep abdominal adhesion. You do have these electrodes that come with the Dolphin Neurostim. So I will show you, which is going to, you can actually take one of these little electrodes that comes with the vagus nerve kit, and you can put it on the metal plate right here. And then you can take one of these bigger rectangular electrodes like this. And if you wanted to treat deep adhesions on someone, so let's say you had somebody with deep abdominal adhesions, you can't do like deep massage work on those. It's really difficult to get your hands on it. You can't stick needles in it to do injections or dry needling because it's really deep. So you don't want to poke holes in internal organs. But what you can do is take one of these pads and stick it on the back like this, and use your 2 Dolphin Neurostims on the front and treat across. And it's actually going to draw electrons from the front, from here, all the way to the back. So you can reach deep down in to get those deep abdominal adhesions. And that's a favorite technique of mine for people who have those kind of adhesions. And just so you know, if you've had 1 abdominal surgery, you have an 80 to 85% chance of getting abdominal adhesions. If you have 2 abdominal surgeries, it's a 100% chance. You absolutely have it. And it doesn't matter if your doctor scoped you, he still stuck things down in your abdomen, and your abdomen gets pretty freaky about this. When your entrails threaten to become your extrails, it gets pretty bad down in there. So what we want to do is use the device to repolarize that tissue. Once you repolarize that tissue, you're going to find that numbness starts to go away because nerves that were previously entrapped become freed up. And it also will eliminate any pull around the scar itself. and if there's sensitivity there, it actually dissipates that pretty quickly too. And scars do affect things like if you have multiple concussions, believe it or not, part of our concussion protocol is actually treating scars around the body. So there's a whole lot of reasons there to treat scars. Okay. So we've gone over how to hold the device. We've gone over how to change batteries. We've gone over all the buttons. We've gone over how to locate treatment points. We have gone over polarity. We have gone over skin types. We have gone over how to treat scars. So now we need to go over how to go about doing vagus nerve stimulation. So a few years ago, we started to realize that this device does cause significant changes in the body in terms of what it does to your autonomic nervous system. So you have your fight or flight response, which is a sympathetic nervous system, and you have the parasympathetic nervous system, which is what we call rest and digest. So those are represented in acupuncture by the yin and yang symbol. The dark side, the blue side on this is the yin side. That's the female side. That's kind of like the shady side. It's the shady side of the mountain. So it's cool and calm on that side of the mountain. And the bright side is the yang or male side, and that's like the sunny side of the mountain. So the sympathetic nervous system is the bright side. That's the aggressive side. And the yin side is the female and healing side of things in acupuncture. So to modulate those, because you can use this as a neuromodulator, you can actually make measurable changes in that. So if you use this device, you can actually change your cortisol levels. This will drop your cortisol by some points at about 50%. And that's your stress hormone. So you don't want that to be too particularly high. You need some cortisol, but not too much. It will also change a number called your heart rate variability, HRV. If you look that up, it's tied to just about everything. It is a measure of how robust the overall total power of your autonomic nervous system is, your ability to resist stress and injury and disease, and your ability to recover from it if you get sick or injured. So the higher that number is, the better off you are. As a matter of fact, good heart rate variability is actually considered to be a sign of longevity. So the better your heart rate variability is, the better your chances are of living a long time and being healthy. And you can modulate it with this. This actually will change your health for the better. I know of lots of cases of people who've used this who have just been suffering from long-standing diseases for long periods of time. This is a way to tone your nervous system and get some extra energy in there to fight against some things. It's a great way to, what I'm going to teach you with vagus nerve stimulation is a great way to lower systemic inflammatory responses in your body, whether it be some kind of autoimmune response, something like toxic mold syndrome, or if you have lots of anxiety and your system is just really overwhelmed. I used to have a stepdaughter who was autistic, and doing microcurrent stimulation was a good way to calm things down for her a bit. So there are a lot of uses for this. So I'm going to go over how to do this. This is something you can do for yourself at home. A lot of athletes use vagus nerve stimulation for recovery after their workouts. If you are an elite athlete and you work out a lot, we do recommend you do this immediately after your workout. So the sooner you can get this on, the better off you're going to be. Do it for about 20 minutes. It helps the nervous system, helps you onset muscle soreness, and will also help you to recover much faster from your workout of what they call overtraining syndrome, OTS, which is really a problem for distance runners, like people who do long distance anything, high intensity long distance things. Okay, so to do that, you're going to need a Dolphin Neurostim like this. You're going to need.
Interrupt. Can you
You're
hear
going
me?
to need the. Yes.
Hi, would you mind saying that last little bit again? It froze on our end for a second.
Oh
So,
Lord.
thank you.
Yeah, but I got a low bandwidth signal. So let's do that again. All right. So if you were an elite athlete and you do high intensity, like distance workouts, like you're a runner or you're a swimmer or whatever, if you do that stuff too much, you can actually overtax your autonomic nervous system and go into what's called overtraining syndrome. And when your heart rate variability drops too low, what that means is no matter how hard you train, you don't get faster and you don't get stronger. And that becomes really important when you look at somebody, let's like an Olympic marathon runner. Okay. So nobody can maintain that level of physicality for months and months and months. When you train for a marathon, you train to peak on a certain date, right? Like on the 24th of whatever, like that's when you want to peak. So you do all these workouts, and you build your rest periods in there so that you have time to recover. Sometimes if you push it too hard, you go into overtraining syndrome. And unfortunately, what that means is your heart rate variability drops, your ability to recover from your workout drops off as well. And according to the research, and I think it was out of South Korea, you need about 72 hours of rest to reset your system. Well, now you set off your peak date by 3 days. What happens if that happens, say, 4, 5, 6 times during your training regimen? All of a sudden, your peak date is a month off from where it should be. And now you're in hot water because you're not in the same kind of shape everybody else is. So if you use this after your workouts, you can use it as a way to force your system to recover. It just push your energy into it and really stimulates things. And the funny thing is we were working on this for elite athletes and running all the numbers, and then COVID hit. And so then nobody was doing athletics. We're like, well, we got this great thing, but like nobody's doing athletic events right now. So the funny thing is we found that it looks like I might be freezing a little bit there. We found that all the numbers you need to recover from COVID are the same thing you need to recover from athletic events. So we actually got emergency authorization for these units for acute respiratory distress with COVID and long haul COVID in Canada. The FDA is a little, they're a little slower behind things. It's a big system. So anyway, like hospitals in Canada were using these. Meanwhile, on this end, we're struggling with not enough oxygen machines and whatever else it was. So now that COVID is over, we can get back to the business of this, using it for athletic recovery. But it also works quite well for other things. So if there are some elite gyms that you go to, when you go in, they actually measure your heart rate variability. They hook you up to a machine, and they look at it and they say, okay, your heart variability is good. We want you to do a full workout today. Or they may say, it's kind of moderate. So like cut your workout in half today. But if your heart rate variability is too low, they say like do 2 burpees and go home. Like we need you to recover from this stuff. And so that's how they keep their athletes from going into overtraining syndrome is actually monitor that on a regular basis. When they do a stress test in a hospital, that's what they're looking for. So if I put you on a treadmill and your heart rate doesn't vary in speed and tempo, that means your system is so stressed it can't respond to any more stress. So I put you on a treadmill and it's your heart rate variability is this particular number, and I get you to walk really fast for a long period of time and it doesn't change. That's a problem. That means your system can't respond to incoming stressors. That's the kind of person that if you put them to sleep, might not wake up. Like that's how important that number is. So you'll hear sometimes about, well, we took mom to the hospital. She needs a hip replacement. But when they did a stress test, they said, this is not a good idea because she might die on the table. Like that's one of the numbers they look at. But that also has to do with athletic recovery. So how do we set this thing up? Need a Dolphin Neurostim. One of the things that I really do recommend is that you guys get a bottle of alcohol or alcohol gel, and this metal plate on here, we want to clean this off because these little electrodes, we have to have them specially cut to fit on here. So we want to, let me grab a handy dandy paper towel here with some alcohol and clean this off. We want to clean any oil off of here from our fingers so that when you stick this little electrode on here, it sticks well. If any oil gets on this, it doesn't stick very well. So I can use this over and over and over again because this is never going to touch anybody's skin. It's just going to touch this metal plate on here. So I'll use one of these electrodes for a month or so before I change it. And if you ever have to buy these, they're not outrageously expensive or anything, but it's just an extra cost. So if you just clean these a little bit, it saves you from having to buy more of these electrodes. All right, you need one of these white cables. Let me grab one for you guys so you can see what we're talking about here. let's see here. You need a white cable that's going to have two ends on it like this. One looks like a male connector and one looks like a female connector, but it's not. It's all a trick. If you look in there, you will see a male connector in there as well. So it's shrouded. Some hospitals actually require that you have this shroud on there. So we're going to connect. It doesn't matter which end because they're both the same, but you're going to connect to this electrode that's on the ground plate of the Dolphin Neurostim like this. And the nice thing is there is actually a whole entire, there's a whole entire like little tutorial like that comes with the Dolphin Neurostim that's got all this stuff on it. So you guys can check that out. All right. So we've got this. Now you need to go in your kit and get some of these electrodes, these pads like this, and you're going to connect that up. So now I'm connected like this. Okay. But you'll notice there's nothing on the tip of the unit, but there is in your kit a connector that looks like this. It's got a cup on one end, and it's got a male connector on the other. And if you look in that cup right there, you'll see a metal plate in there. So that little metal plate has to connect up to the tip of this unit. So you want to not jam it on there, but you want to push it on there firmly so you got a good strong connection. And now I've got this little male connector right here. Now, there are two things that we can do with this. We can put two ear clips on there, or we can put one ear clip on there. We started out with one. So a lot of people like to use one ear clip. If you're going to use one ear clip, you simply take the little baggie that comes with the Dolphin Neurostim, and it has a variety of different clips in here, and I'm going to show you what you've got. The black ones have a little metal plate on them. These are the most conductive, but if you have sensitive skin, electricity tends to kind of run through one area of the metal and will irritate your skin a little bit. So we also have these white connectors. If you have an older kit, these white connectors look like, let's see here. Look like this, kind of a flat little conductive rubber plate. But if you have a new kit, and if you don't have a new kit, you can purchase these. They just came out. We have our dome tip on here like this. These make it much easier to get to some of the areas of the ear that we need to hit. So we're going to talk about that for a minute. So what is the vagus nerve? Well, the vagus nerve is the longest nerve in the body. It kind of attaches to your brain and then comes, probably the closest you're going to get is kind of right here by the ears. Then it comes down, kind of comes together, and it goes down to your internal organs. It's called the wandering nerve, and it's the information superhighway between your brain and your gut. More information goes from your gut to your brain than goes from your brain to your gut, which is why they call it your second brain. So there was a recent study that was done. It was an MRI study, and they looked at the density of surface nerve fibers for the vagus nerve, like where are they most dense around the ear. Okay, so I have an ear here, so I don't have to turn my head all funny. And there were really two areas that came up. And one is this flappy little thing right here. This is called your tragus right here. So you can take your finger and kind of feel the tragus right there. It's like if you push your ear, that's the one that'll kind of close your ear canal. So that's a tragus. So the inside of the tragus was considered to be the highest concentration of nerve endings. The problem is if you put an ear clip on there, what happens is it doesn't tend to stick very well. Like it tends to just kind of slide off. Some people have a really great tragus for that. Most people don't. So if you don't have a great tragus like most of us, there is another location that works pretty well. And that is in this area right here. This is called the upper concha of the ear. So this area right here. And the whole entire reason we have these dome clips is so that they will reach over the back of the ear up into this area. Okay. However, if you use these conductive rubber dome clips or these or the other white ones, this conductive rubber is not conductive until you put something. It's electrically conductive, but you have to put a conductive medium on it. So you can either put like ultrasound gel on it. I just use alcohol. It's like if I have a little bottle of like alcohol gel like this, I can just squeeze a little bit out. I can put it on here, and that is all I need in the world. And so you want to take it and just kind of push it up in there, squeeze it a little bit so you've got a good connection there. So what it looks like on our ear here, Again, this is the upper concha right in here. So we're going to put this up in that area like that, and we should have a good connection. Now, that's if you're going to do one ear. You can actually do this with 2 ears, which is part of why you have so many electrodes here. The other thing you have in your kit is something called a Y wire or a splitter, which looks like this. So it's got a female connector on one end and 2 male connectors on the other end. And you can connect this. So instead of connecting an ear clip directly to this, like that, you can connect your splitter onto here. And now you can put 2 ear clips on here. So just because it's good contrast, I'm going to pick the 2 white dome ones because they're our newest ones. I don't know how much these are. They're not terribly expensive. You can get an upgrade kit if you call the guys at the office or get online. All right. So you can actually put these on both ears. So the other location that you can go to is actually the earlobe. It is probably the least desirable of the 3. It has the lowest number of surface nerves for the vagus nerve. However, in our initial protocols, when we did our initial measurements and stuff, it was done with the earlobe, and we got very good results with it. It's just these, you move with the science. And so the current science says, hey, these other places are better. So I'm going to put this on one side, up in the upper concha, on the other side in the upper concha. And now I need to figure out where to put this. Okay. So the 2 locations, according to our chart here, you can either put it on your left wrist, not your right wrist. Put it on your left wrist because that's more calming for whatever reason. Or you can put it below your belly button. So you can go 4 fingers above your belly button, 4 fingers below your belly button. Take your pick. It's your gut. We're just trying to run the length of the vagus nerve. Okay, so if you're using 2 ear clips, the preferred place to put it is actually on your left wrist. I do recommend that you clean your left wrist, again, with some alcohol, because you can use these pads over and over as long as it's on yourself. Obviously, you wouldn't want to use them on other people because it's whatever's coming off of your skin is going on their skin. But there are 3 calming acupuncture points right here called the golden triangle in acupuncture. And you can either put it long ways like this, and you can hit most of those, or you can go across the wrist like this. You want to go to this second crease right here and kind of cover that crease up. And that kind of gets your 3 acupuncture points. Again, left wrist. If you're going to use 2 ear clips, this is important. You want to put the Dolphin Neurostim on the biphasic setting. Okay. Here's the interesting thing. The left ear seems to be more calming. The right ear seems to be more stimulating. Go figure. So we need to be able to kind of balance things out a little bit. We don't want to try and bring down the side that brings things up. It just doesn't seem to work as well. We've done a lot of experimentation with this, and it just doesn't yield the results we want. So if you're going to use 2 ear clips, use the biphasic setting and use your left wrist. If you're going to use 1 ear clip, we recommend just using it on your left ear and either choosing your left wrist or your tummy. Now, there is a situation where you might use your right ear. So if the left ear brings things down, which is mostly what you're going to want to do, is drop your cortisol levels, chill your system out. But sometimes if you dip just a little bit too low, you might need to bring it back up again, just a pinch. Like you feel like a little sleepy afterwards and you got to go on with your day. If you take the clip and switch it to your right ear and then take this pad and go to your belly button and put this on the positive setting, then it will bring things up a bit. We do not recommend doing this at nighttime unless you just really hate sleep, because it can keep you up at night. Not all the time, but if you have a sensitive system, it might. So if you're going to use the positive polarity, we do recommend doing it earlier in the day rather than later. But if you don't believe me, try it out yourself. You can see maybe your system's a little different. And doing that for about 5 minutes. So when we do this in the office, I'm going to go over procedure first, and then I'll talk about why in a minute. When we do this in our office, even if a patient's going to be taking this device home with them, we start them out with a 5-minute treatment. So the first time you do this, we would recommend 5 minutes. Like 99.9% of everybody out there, if they feel anything, it's going to be just a slight little dip in their anxiety level. However, there are some people out there, it hits them like a ton of bricks. Like their system is just very sensitive, and you do it and it just drops their nervous system, and they're really, really calm. So you want to know where their nervous system stands before you send this home with them and turn them loose with it. So what we recommend is doing 5 minutes. See how you feel. The next day, if that worked okay, just do 5 minutes. But if it didn't seem to be quite enough, add another 5 minutes to it. So you add 5 minutes a day until you hit about 20 to 30 minutes. And that's usually enough for most people. Remember that we are neuromodulating the nervous system here. We're not beating on a muscle that's too tight or something like that. So it's often better to use a feather than to use a hammer in some cases. In this case, you want to use a feather. You want to gently nudge it in the right direction rather than whacking it upside the head with a hammer. So you just add about 20 minutes a day. How often do you want to do this? Well, let me give you some examples. So I am 53 years old. I work 10-hour days. I also travel and I teach microcurrent stuff. So like once, sometimes twice a month, I might be off at a conference somewhere speaking, or I might be, teaching a workshop for a couple of days. Well, on top of that, I raise 2 kids by myself. So I'm pretty busy most of the time. And I find that I probably about Wednesday in the week, like I really start to drag a bit. I didn't when I was in my early 40s, but I'm not in my early 40s anymore. So like I need to rejuvenate my system a little bit. So I find that for me, I do vagus nerve stimulation twice, maybe 3 times a week for about 20 minutes a pop. And that seems to modulate my nervous system enough that it keeps me from getting fatigued during the daytime, keeps my cortisol levels down. It actually affects my allergies, so my allergies aren't as bad. And if you get sick, it's quite helpful. As a matter of fact, I can tell you when I had COVID, I got it back and it was a Delta variant. My oxygen saturation was hanging out around 90. I measured it the whole way through. It was hanging out around 91 or so. And I was taking all the herbs I was supposed to take. Like I had talked to every functional medicine person I knew. So I had the herbs down, I had acupuncture points down, I had the vagus nerve stimulation, and I had a nasty headache. But other than that, I was doing okay. Felt a little fatigued, was coughing a little bit. Well, I decided I was doing just fine because I was tired of drinking nasty Chinese herbs. So I just didn't drink my herbs and I didn't do my Dolphin Neurostim stuff. And I woke up the next day, my oxygen saturation was 80. And I thought I was going to have to go to the hospital. And I got 2 kids at the house. And it's just me and them. So I didn't want them to see me leave the house in a hearse or in an ambulance. So I started doing vagus nerve stimulation. And after about 2 hours of it, I got my oxygen saturation from 80 back up to about 90. So it actually is very, very effective. So when you are severely ill, when you have something really severe going on, it's okay to use a lot of vagus nerve stimulation. Like if you have black mold, toxic mold syndrome or something like that. This is something you're going to do, not for 20 minutes a day, but for an hour a day or more. So there are different applications for it. Generally for recovery purposes, if you work out really hard, for example, like I speak sometimes at it's called the Society for Weightlifting Injury Specialists, the Swiss conference, and it's all the power lifters, like you want to meet the strongest man in the world, that's where you go. You walk in, it's a building full of people who look like the Incredible Hulk or Thor, the men and the women. They're all just really big, cut up people. And they get crazy injuries. Like they tear their pec off and have to have it wired back on. Like stupid stuff like that normal people don't do. But anyway, like those are people who use a therapy like this to keep their systems moving back up because they have to be able to recover quickly to build their power over time for these competitions they do where they lift crazy amounts of weight. So anyway, other times you might want to do vagus nerve stimulation. If you have a lot of anxiety, like that's a big deal. You have a kid who's autistic. Fear is a huge issue in the autistic community. They have a hyperactive amygdala. And if you use these, what it often does is it will calm things down a little bit. And once your anxiety is better, it is much easier to be able to function within the community. And I can tell you that I have some attention deficit disorder. like you can't notice that for me right now. But I noticed that if I have to sit down and write something for an extended period of time, I need to stay focused. Being able to do vagus nerve stimulation ahead of time really does a good job of keeping me on task. So a lot of stuff you can do with this, and it does modulate your nervous system quite well. It's a very powerful modality. And I think we're very fortunate to be able to do it with this device. So we can treat acupuncture points, motor points, trigger points. We can treat scars. Like the stuff I have done with this device over the years, I've worked in neurology clinics. I've worked in neurosurgery clinics. I've worked in multidisciplinary pain management clinics with everything from chiropractors to Harvard-trained psychiatrists to physical therapists, all in one mishmash. I've worked in women's health and I've worked in chiropractic settings. In all of those settings, this is a very applicable therapy. It'll give you the fastest psoas muscle release you've ever seen. There are great protocols for things like stiff necks and bad backs. There's a lot of stuff you could do. Like if you just delve in, like even just this little book that comes with it, there's a lot of good protocols in there. If you are an active therapist, it would behoove you to take one of our in-person courses. They're relatively cheap. They're usually a 2-day workshop somewhere. We do them in Florida and Canada and kind of all over the country. So you guys will all get an email tomorrow from the company, and that will be an invitation to join our Facebook forum. I recommend that you do that. You can post questions there. You can ask questions. You can follow threads of people who are treating certain disorders, and people will chime in like, have you tried this? Well, why aren't you doing that? And, what about this acupuncture point? And there's some really good information back there. You can kind of look through there and look through the different threads. So it's a nice resource to have. The other thing you're going to get is a link to this so you can watch this over again as many times as you want. You can certainly sign up for this again and watch me say all the same stuff all over again. I may say it a little bit differently. And sometimes I give you new stuff. You never know, but it doesn't cost anything and it's not much time out of your day and it's free. So there is that. So I do recommend you guys do that. And also we will email you if there are upcoming courses, if there are new products. We're not going to bomb you with things, but we'll let you know when there's stuff coming up that you might be interested in. So that is just about everything I have to say about all those things without teaching you guys an entire 2-day course. So there's your very brief outline for things you can do with this and how to hold it, how to turn it on and all that kind of stuff. Other things you might want to know. There is, with your device, there is let's see if I can find one over here. There is an extension probe that comes with the device. Looks like this. Looks like a pen with one of these. So you simply stick it on the end of the Dolphin Neurostim. You do still have to touch the metal plate, but this is bendable, so you can hit points in your back. You can take this to a back scratcher for home treatments. You can use this in your mouth if you needed to treat a scar. When I worked in women's health, we would actually use 2 of these and treat episiotomy scars. We'd send them home with the patient. They buy these become theirs. They bring them back between treatments. They're cheap. They're about $25 a piece, so it's very affordable. Things you want to do with the Dolphin Neurostim and don't want to do with the Dolphin Neurostim. So these are our things. This is our no-no list. Okay. So the very first thing I want you guys to remember is what I call the rule of pencils. Don't stick this anywhere you wouldn't stick a pencil. That's it. Like, don't stick it in your eye. Don't jam it way up your nose. Don't jam it down your throat. Don't stick it in your ear hole or any other place where you wouldn't stick a pencil. Like, as long as you stick with that, you're pretty good. Now, other than those places, like you could stick it pretty well anywhere. You could treat inside your mouth if you needed to. I do recommend the extension probes. You can treat acupuncture points inside the ear. There's a whole auricular acupuncture thing where you treat the whole body through the ear. You can treat on top of the head with it, unless the person has a history of seizures or epilepsy. If seizures, there's one point on top of the head. It's called Bai-Hui. It's a governing vessel point. You have to avoid that one point. There's a lot of other points that can actually stop seizures, and I've done it before. Like, it works. Just don't stick this on top of somebody's head if they have a history of seizures. If you have somebody who's pregnant, I would avoid all treatment in the first trimester just because 50% of all pregnancies end up in a miscarriage. So most of it, you never even knew you were pregnant, but you don't want to be the one weird thing that happens on a day when somebody has a miscarriage because hell hath no fury. So stay away from acupuncture points that push energy down. This point on top of the head pushes energy down. Stay away from that one. Stay away from large intestine 4 on pregnant women. That's called the great eliminator. You're not trying to eliminate a pregnancy. Don't treat on top of the shoulders. That pushes energy down. Don't treat around the inside of the ankles. Spleen 6 is there. Spleen 6 is a point that's used to induce labor. Now, if you screw it up and you treat somebody and then you find out they're pregnant, guess what's going to happen? Nothing. They're going to be fine. But if somebody is close to going into a labor, you can actually say, I have used these to set off labor in people. We've tried it sometimes, and their bodies just weren't ready and it didn't work. Like the doctor said, go for it. Nothing happened. But we've also had cases where we did this and like, you better be close to a hospital because it's coming fast. So useful tool for that. Don't treat pregnant women unless the doctor says it's okay. Pacemakers and defibrillators. There is, in the case that comes with the Dolphin Neurostim, there's a little fold-out sheet that has the electrical specs of the device. If you want to treat somebody who's got who's got a defibrillator or a pacemaker, send that to cardiologists and ask them like if it's a yes or no, and go with whatever the decision is. It's fine to use on things like dorsal column spine stimulators, baclofen pumps, insulin pumps, bladder stimulators. All those are fine. That's not a problem. Plates, screws, rods, pins, artificial joints, all those are fine. Not a problem there. Don't treat overactive cancerous tumors. I have treated people for nausea during chemotherapy, but because this can increase cell growth, you don't want to increase cell growth in an area of uncontrolled cell growth. So just don't treat overactive cancerous tumors with this. Other things, if you're going to treat children, turn it down a bit. Don't do as many beeps. Obviously, if it's uncomfortable for them, turn it down. I use this on my children when they were babies for colic and things like that. It works great. But remember, they're babies. They're not full-size adults, so keep it lower. Other things. I think that is all of our contraindications. So what I would like to do at this point is to, we have a few minutes left here, is to take a little bit of time here and give you guys an opportunity to ask questions. So if you guys have questions that you want answered, now would be the time to unmute your mics and ask away. I will answer as many questions as I can between now and 9 o'clock. Tomorrow's the first day of school, so I do have to be home and get my kids in bed. So go. What do we got?
I do have a question. Are you able to treat over, you said you can treat scars on animals. Are you able to treat if there are any bullets or pellets or anything like that? Is that a contraindication?
No, not a problem. You're good there. Something I've seen with dogs, especially when they get spayed, the scar tissue can affect in some of the cases, it really affects their mobility. Like I've treated a couple of show dogs who they got spayed and all of a sudden they couldn't even jump back in a car. And it was literally, it was like 1 or 2 treatments in the parking lot of the doctor's office where I was working, and they were fine after that. So it really does work quite well. And I treated a cat of mine who had terrible kidneys for years. Like the doctor could never figure out why my cat was still alive. I'm like, well, I'm treating these acupuncture points. She said, I don't really believe in acupuncture. I'm like, oh, that's fine. And a year later, she's like, why is your cat still alive? I said, well, I'm just treating these acupuncture points. She said, well, I don't really believe in acupuncture. I'm like, okay. And about 2 months later, she called me. She said, hey, can you stop by my office for a minute? I'm like, sure. So I stopped by her office. She's like, well, I went to this vet conference and I got you these. And she actually handed me an acupuncture chart for dogs and cats. So I guess I've changed her mind. And the current veterinarian who's treating another cat of mine who seems to have bladder crystals because he's a neutered male, she does acupuncture. And I actually just spent, not this week, but last week, I spent 2 hours at her office going over how to use these things on animals. So we're actually going to see if we can maybe do a little bit of research there and get some numbers. Pets have the same problems people do with surgery. They get abdominal adhesions and stuff like that. So anyway, works well on them. Horses are pretty easy to treat. You want to treat them outside, not in a stall. Most horses are fine, but Arabians get kind of fractious. Sometimes it'll put horses to sleep. I had a 2,200-pound Belgian horse fall asleep and pin me up against the side of the barn because he was asleep. He wasn't really trying to hurt me, but it's kind of hard to breathe when a horse that big is leaning on you. So that's why I recommend just do this stuff out in the open. It's generally easier. All right, other questions?
So kind of on that thread, I have some athletes that are also vets. And so a couple of them still have like shrapnel.
Okay.
injuries. So kind of like how she was talking about like bullets,
It's
pellets, that kind of stuff. Same thing.
that's sort of, yeah, yeah. What are you, a VA therapist, or what do you do?
No, athletic trainer, but I work with the Paralympic team, so a lot of our athletes
Gotcha.
are usually vets that end up on a team.
So this actually works really well for phantom limb pain. Just so you know, like if you have amputees, you need to treat that
Yes.
scar, like big time. Treat that scar.
Okay, perfect.
And there's whole protocols for that. But what I can tell you is, if you can't treat, if it's so sensitive, you can't treat directly on the scar, just treat around the scar, and the electrons bouncing back and forth will start to desensitize that area. But there's whole back protocols that are great for those guys. If you got guys in wheelchairs, their deep hip flexors are going to be way too tight. And even if they are paraplegic, it's funny, like even though the nerves may not work down to their feet, the acupuncture points in the feet are the ones that release the deep hip flexor muscles. Acupuncture meridians seem to pass through the fascia, not through the nerves. So you can actually treat those points on the feet, and they're still effective even if they can't move their feet. So if there's no nerve stuff, so you can still move the energy there. I've released frozen shoulders on guys who had like no feeling in their legs at all, and the points are in your knees and in your ankles, but they work. So good tool to use on those guys. And definitely there are a lot of things you can actually do for PTSD issues. There are specific acupuncture points for that. The vagus nerve stimulation is a big deal for that. So if you have guys who are dealing with this kinds of issues, then I do recommend them getting one of these for home use. They're not, excuse me, they're not terribly expensive. You can order them off the website, and it's easy to train somebody how to use these. You just like literally, they just, that if they get a unit, they get this little free seminar, and I can teach them how to do it. But it also gives them a way to treat themselves at home a little bit too. So you can set up, you can figure out what's working for them, and then you can send them home and then actually do treatments at home on themselves. So it really pushes therapy forward, because a lot of those guys tend to be on a training schedule. You know, they have a set goal in mind for whatever it is. So anyway, does that help?
It does. Thank you. The only other question I had when you were talking about putting it on the upper conch, I think is what it was called. So like,
Gotcha. Mm-hmm.
so as silly as this is, I thought about it because I have an earring in that spot. So like if you're working on areas that like, let's say women would have an earring, do you just ask them to take it out, or does it even matter?
Yeah. I mean, if it's not going to hurt them, like if it's not going to make it uncomfortable, the earring just conducts electricity even better. So like, hey, that's kind of a plus, right? I mean,
Okay.
as long as it's not like jiggling the ear around hurting them, right? I mean, we don't want to rip their ear, but I mean, if it's, it's metal running down through the acupuncture point, like how much better could you get than that?
Free treatment.
Like somebody doing half the work for you. Just make sure it's like not on the point that like, makes your nose grow bigger or something like that. There's some weird things you can do with acupuncture points in the ear. So you got to be careful what points you stimulate in there.
Perfect. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Will you
All
go
right.
through one more time how to set up the vagus nerve stimulation on yourself?
Sure. All right. Dolphin Neurostim,
Yes.
circular electrode, white cable connected to that.
Okay.
White cable connected to one of these little pads. You can order more of these if you need from the website. This pad preferably is going to go on your left wrist or below your belly button, about 4 fingers or so below your belly button. So clean the area with alcohol, stick it on there. The left wrist is kind of a good general area. If you're using one ear clip, you're going to either go on the earlobe, which is the least desirable location, the tragus of the ear, which is the most desirable, but it usually slips off of that on most people, or in the upper concha of the ear right here. Once you have all that on, when you turn the Dolphin Neurostim on, now you can see that I've got this green light on right here. If I squeeze it just a little bit, the light goes out, so I've got a good connection. Now I don't. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take a little bit of electrode gel here, and I'm going to put it on here. And now stick it on my ear, and now you hear a really high pitch, which means I have a good connection. Then I'm going to choose my polarity. Most of the time, I'm going to bring things down, which is negative. And I'm going to push this little button. I could just hold this button down right here. Like I could do this for as long as I wanted to. Or I can just push this little button right here, and then the unit goes silent, and it's on a timed treatment sequence of anywhere from 11 to about 14 minutes. So it'll just keep doing that for a while. So that's what I would go with, because once a cycle is done, then it's going to revert back to a high pitch like this. So that's all you really need to do. If you're going to do both ears, left wrist, put it on the biphasic setting, and again, use this little switch right here. And it makes a slightly different sound if it makes any sound at all. It'll usually make kind of a loping sound. And that's how you set it up. This actually brings me to a really good point. So this is something people often ask about. So I'm going to take all this off for just a minute. So there's this nifty little light on here that goes out when you find acupuncture points, and there's a high pitch. It's also your battery. It's also your battery check light. So listen to me carefully. The only time you ever want to look at the light on this thing, because otherwise it will drive you insane. There are so many variations of things that can happen. Like, it just gets wonky really fast. When you turn this on, look to see if you have a green light. If you don't have a green light, change the battery. Okay, that's one time. The other time is when you're looking for acupuncture points. When you pull this across the skin, when you get over one, the light will go out. Now, you'll notice that the light is flashing now that I'm pushing the button. If I put it on another setting, the light might flash or it might not flash. So when you're doing a treatment, do not watch the light on this thing. It'll drive you crazy. It will not give you any useful information. You'll try to correlate the beeps between the two units and make sure the lights flash together. Like, that doesn't mean a thing in the world. Just look at the light to see if the battery's good and to see if you found an acupuncture point. Other than that, don't fool with it. You'll end up asking questions about things that have been answered a million times over, and really, it's just going to be a waste of your time. So I forgot to say that earlier, but that is one of the major customer service calls that we get all the time at the main office in Canada, and it keeps the people there from being able to answer questions about how to treat much more serious things. So do pay attention to the light for those two circumstances only. All right, what else have we got on your plate?
I was wondering
Anything
if
else?
is there any protocol for a trigger finger?
Yes, there actually is. So if you're going to treat something like a trigger finger, a lot of that tends to come from the neck. But if you're going to treat the neck, you got to treat the low back first. So think about it this way: if your hips are off a little bit, then your whole body kind of gets tilted, but you don't stay like this. You square your body up, okay? Which means the muscle tension levels contract or like they shorten up or get longer all up and down your spine because of the imbalance in your hips. So when you get up to here, you've got one side that's tighter than the other. So when you put pressure on nerve roots, and it doesn't have to be disc pressure, it can be muscular pressure, it increases the levels of acetylcholine along that pathway. So if you have a dermatome chart, you can buy these on the website. What you'll see is the neck is what innervates everything down in here. So if there's pressure on things up here, acetylcholine levels go up along this pathway. And what ends up happening is that acetylcholine doesn't make muscles spasm, but it makes them slowly draw. So as these things tighten up, okay, it tends to pull on all these areas. Carpal tunnel is the same way. So if you want this to be affected, you got to release this. But if you want this to be released, you need to release this. But if you want this to be released, you got to release the low back. So you can make it more simple than that. Like if you do a local treatment with this on trigger fingers, you can see some changes in it. But what you tend to find is that it tends to cycle back because you're not getting far enough back into the root of what's going on. So like that's almost a whole workshop right there. But yes, you can treat it. It is very treatable. As a matter of fact, in September, I'm doing 1 or 2 courses down in DeLand, Florida. And the therapist who owns the clinic, she's a certified hand therapist. She's been a certified hand therapist for years, and she uses this stuff all the time on that. So it is a really good modality for treating those kinds of things. It actually doesn't do such a bad job either on Dupuytren's contracture. even though that's a little, that there's a little more genetics behind that, but it does seem to help release that. I have a friend of mine who's a chiropractor who, when he stresses his system out, his hands start to kind of get clawed up, and I can treat him, and it does tend to get better until he pisses it off again. But it does seem to be a good measure to kind of keep him going. So I hope that helps.
Thank you.
Sure. What else we got, guys? Everybody has all their questions answered? Okay. Well, it is 8:55, so I'm going to close out our meeting here. I would like to thank you guys for showing up. Do join our Facebook forum when you get your invitation tomorrow, and do look out for emails from us. We offer some other courses online, some of which are an hour or two, some are pre-recorded, some are live. So keep your eyes open on those. There's a lot of good information out there. I've been doing this a long time, and I never get tired of it. Even after almost 25 years of messing with this stuff, there's always new stuff to learn. If you learn a little bit about acupuncture, it will help your journey a lot. But the microcurrent in and of itself does amazing things without even knowing acupuncture. So on that note, have a very nice evening. I'm going to go home and prep my children for the first day of school. Good night.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye, guys.
Bye.